What do I do at these panels? Okay, so normally what I do is I kind of talk a little bit about my career. How many of you have been to a panel that I've done before? Okay, so I can use all my lame old jokes here. So, do revision number one. So anyway, for those of you, how many even know who I am? All right, I don't have to go to the basic version. So I work at DC Comics, but I used to work at all these other companies. How many of you guys are aspiring artists? Okay. Okay, how many of you are just aspiring to work in the comics? Just out of curiosity. Okay. All right, not as many as in other cities. Okay. Yeah. So what I usually do at this panel is I kind of talk a little bit about my struggle, my struggle to get into comics. I didn't realize this. It's almost like therapy that I've been doing for 30 years now. As I talk about my career, as I've gotten older, I've gained some insights, and I realized I just did this one talk to a bunch of kids about careers in the art, and they were asking me like what my main obstacle to achieving what I wanted to achieve was, and I had all these other different answers in the years prior to this sort of epiphany I had, which was, it was my parents. My parents were my biggest obstacle to getting into comics. And then I realized really how difficult that can be because, you know, they're your parents, right? But they really didn't want me to get into comics, they didn't want me to get into arts. And so you're weighing just how difficult it is to do that in general, and then obviously you don't want to disappoint your parents, and then Korean culture, Korean, you know, it's even doubly so. But I think the message to the kids was essentially, if you want to work in comics or the arts or anything really in life, it can be done, and people do it all the time, and that's important for young people to hear because, and older people, because sometimes it seems so hard to achieve or so far away. When I was in college, I was actually pre-married, and I spent a lot of time, I'm looking at Constance, who's a doctor. Yeah, no, it's all right. I spent, no, I was talking about medicine. And so I was like, I spent a lot of time like agonizing if I was gonna get into medical school, and then this older person who was a couple years ahead of me just said like, dude, you're stressing me out with your stress. Just stop. If you really, really want it, you can make it happen. And that did alleviate some of my anxiety. And I share that with people that want to get into comics because, again, it seems so far away and so difficult to achieve sometimes. But that's the hardest part, really, is not giving up on something. And I think one of the things I say on my Twitch stream, for those of you who don't even, I'll explain what it is later. You're probably going, what is it? I don't know. Anyway, so what I say is like, just draw. You know, but I was thinking like, why is it so hard for me to give you real answers as opposed to just something pithy like that? And I think it's because over the 30 years, I've given a lot of advice to people, but I don't see people necessarily embracing the advice and doing it. So at some point, you just go like, you know what? I'm not going to give you 10 things. I draw from life, do a sketchbook, you know, get these books, draw over and over, because they 99 times out of 100 they don't, right? And so I thought it would just be easier to say, just draw, and then you know that way I don't have to go through this whole laundry list. But I think it's the realization I had was learning how to draw. A kid asked me this morning, like, I can't draw the poses, that's the hardest part for me. And I was trying to give him an answer, and in thinking about the answer, the only answer I really have is it's akin to like learning a foreign language. I don't know if any of you guys speak another language or learned another language. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, drawing is another language, it's a form of communication. And you can't just expect to start drawing, even though we can all see things and visualize it and see other people draw it. It's weird when we try to do it, it doesn't materialize. Like I want to draw a house and it looks like 5 lines that don't even connect, right? And so, how do you get there? And to me, it's just like, how do you learn a language? And if you think about like even Chinese language, they would actually have a symbol. One symbol represented an object, a horse or a house or whatever. So if you think about it, that symbol is the drawing of that horse or that house. And so when I draw a house, that is a very complex symbol, which just happens to look like a house, right? So the Chinese, they made it too difficult. They should have just drawn the house, right? And so at the end of the day, if you think about it that way, you can understand how long and how difficult it is to learn a foreign language. Some people want to learn a foreign language, but few can really put in the time and effort. It gets done over 5 or 6 years as people do it and work on it on a daily basis and learn vocabulary and learn grammar and practice speaking and reading and listening. And that's what you have to do with art. It's not just about drawing the house. You have to eat, live, and breathe it. You have to listen to it. You have to learn the vocabulary of how to construct things. You have to understand the grammar of composition. So there's all these things that, so that's my more complicated answer to those of you, because sometimes I come off kind of like a jackass online and just say, just draw. So it's a lot easier to say. Anyway, so what is Twitch? Because how many of you even know what Twitch is? Wow, okay. Yeah, it's a lot better than my household. My parents are still trying to figure out the VCR. Easy joke. Anyway, so at the end of the day, Twitch is like this amazing platform, mostly for gamers, but there are a lot of creatives that are streaming, and so I stream like once or twice a week, and I draw sketches. And the whole format was really kind of based on doing these kinds of panels where I would kind of talk about my career and then draw and talk about process and drawing. Oh, fantastic, great. All right, great, so we can start. And then I would do the sketches, and then I would give them away. And I would give them away because back in the early days of my career, I did charge for sketches, and then when things got, when I started getting some popularity, I sort of give back, I started doing free sketches for fans, and then that got too hard to kind of meet that demand, and so I just would do sketches at panels and then give them away to a lucky few. And so I was doing that, and I enjoyed those panels the most at Comic-Con. And when I looked at Twitch, I said, here it is. Here's the online way for me to replicate this panel, kind of talk in real time to people, interact with them, take questions from them, go off on tangents and draw and show them how to draw, show them how I draw, and then give the art away as sort of a thank you for their support. So I'm going to do that now. So the only problem is I didn't bring any paper. And I do have paper, it's just at the hotel. And so that's too big, sir. I need something about this big, given the amount of time we have left. No, so backing boards. Anyone have a spare backing board? All right, thank you.
All right,
thank
don't
you.
knock
All right.
it down.
Anyone have a spare $100? I just need like a few. I want to afford lunch at Disney World tomorrow. Anyway, thank you. All right. Well, you guys think I'm really fast. Okay, 3. All right. You got getting super ambitious. Oh, hey, even smaller. Okay, these are too many. All right. Oh, those are good. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. I'll just take it. All right. No, it's all good.
Hey, I need some backing boards when you're done.
All right. So, yeah. So my parents, yeah, they didn't want me to become a comic artist. They wanted me to. My father was a doctor, and they moved to America because for the American dream, literally. And so they wanted. And my father was the first in his family to go to college and become a doctor as well. And so they're very proud of him and what he achieved. And I think they wanted to keep the ball rolling. And I kind of killed all their hopes and dreams. I blame American culture. But I didn't create it. I just grew up in it, right? It's true. You can't blame someone that was indoctrinated at a very young age. So let's see, what do we have? Can you see a line?
Yeah.
Oh, there's no line there. Trick question. Sorry, hold on. You see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I can't see it. All right, is there a character you guys want me to draw? Besides Goku, anyone? I love the character so much. Batman? All right, okay. Batman's easy. Batman's easy. Ta-da! Yeah. Here, let me show you the difference. Okay, hold on a sec. Psylocke. I'll just do Batman real quick because he's like golden oldie. So basically, you draw an egg, and then you draw Batman. So that's if you want to learn. That's the jackass part of me speaking out again. That's not really the real me. I just, I'm all about the cheap laughs. So, yeah. Okay. So, I don't know if I should talk anymore about really. So my parents just were not into it, and it was because they really didn't understand it, and I think they always saw comics as a huge distraction because I was always trying to buy them and read them and bug them for them.
When did they come around?
When did they come around? They still don't know I actually work in comics. They think I'm a pediatrician that works in Northridge, California. That travels a lot. Always working late, curing the dying. No, they came around very, very quickly. To their credit, they just raised and supported me. To their credit. So after I graduated from college, I moved back home into my house, which I'm sure they were thrilled about. And
Could you slide it to the right a little bit, please?
to the right,
Yeah.
this is just like streaming online. All right, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. If you guys just carry on your own side private conversations here and there, it will be exactly like my Twitter. Like I'm drawing like the greatest Goku ever, and people are literally talking about like, oh, I stubbed my toe this morning, or I couldn't get some sleep last night. Oh, I'm so hungry for Taco Bell. This stream is making me so hungry. Anyway, I blame the millennials. Really, anyway, so. Okay, wrong crowd. I blame the Generation X, whatever, those dudes. Yeah, anyway. So, what was I saying? Did they come around? Yes, they came around. They were not happy at first, but, and it wasn't that I had to be super successful, that came later. Actually, once I got my very first assignment, they were both very, very ecstatic for me. And so when I got the call from a company that's not DC, they were, my mom and I did like a little jig. Yeah, we did a little dance in the kitchen. And so I could tell that she was happy. Because How old was I when I thought, probably like 12 years old, I thought I could draw better than half the people in comics. Anyone that's young, raise your hand. You know the feeling. I think everyone thinks that they're better than the people that are being published. So there are a lot of artists I just thought were not good. And so I drew a picture of a character that's green and gets big when he gets angry. And I only drew like half of it, and then I was you can't be arrogant at 10, right? You just don't know any better. You're just naive, I think. I put that drawing in the mail and I sent it to that company, thinking I would literally get hired to draw comic books. Yeah. They sent it back to me. They mailed they sent it back to me, and with the notes, I think like, it wasn't a no prize, I didn't get a no prize, but there was like a form letter they sent back to me. So, and then I didn't really draw panel to panel work until I was like a senior in high school, but even then it was on typewriter paper. It was small. I didn't really, like I said, I was a very undisciplined artist. I didn't even do a draw an egg. I would just start with it, whatever, and just start drawing, and then I would end up with a drawing that was not centered properly. Sorry. If any of you want to just drop like tips into a jar here in front, that's what happens on Twitch too. I'm just kidding. It's a weird thing, you know. Getting paid without taking your clothes off. It's so, not that I do that either. But anyway, what was I saying? I've lost my track of thought. Yeah, so it was like in high school that I kind of focused on, but then it wasn't until college, so about 2021, that I started getting very serious about it and realized that, like, wow, what an idiot I was when I was 10 or 11. Now I'm ready to get hired, and that was horrible too. So, and that's the weirdest thing is I think my 10-year-old probably had the right instincts. The people I didn't think that were that good actually weren't that as good as the people that were really good. So it wasn't like I was looking at Neil Adams going like, oh, I could draw better than this guy. But every working professional was head and shoulders better than I was. And I think that just speaks to the fact that we're blind to our own work for whatever reason. And I think it's something that was created evolutionarily or by God so that we wouldn't murder our own children, right? Because, I won't go there. Parents, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? There are times we go like, all right, I've had it.
I got you.
I can't. They're so cute. They're my offspring, whatever. And I think that's, oh crap, my arm. I think that's like kids, right? Kids are like your works of art. And when you create them, they, no matter how imperfect they are, they look better than everyone else's. And yeah. So, excuse me?
What artist did you look at?
Oh, I never thought I had to be as good as anyone. I just thought I was better than these other people. I was like, how can they get paid and I can't? Oh crap, I just pooed in my pants. So, I was like 10 years old. I don't know what I'm doing, right? No control over my body at that age. I don't know what it was. I think it's just, I think at a young age you can tell when something looks good or not, right? Or looks good to you or not, right? So, I don't know what I'm doing here.
There was a, hold on a second. Was there anything,
So when I grew up, dinosaurs walked the earth. There was no movies that had special effects. I know that's hard to believe, but they had to take like little miniatures and make them move like puppets. It was horrible. It was an awful way to experience fantasy. So there was nothing. So my version of Infinity, well, I almost said it. My version of a movie that had lots of special effects was comic books, right? So that's what I read, and my parents would not let me buy them, and so it was really just a struggle. It's like contraband, right? Anyway, so I remember the first comic I got, I think it was a Tarzan comic book at the barbershop when I was like 6 or 7. I moved to the United States when I was 5. I didn't speak any English at all. And they would have, magazines and comic books at the barbershop. And the thing about comics is that if the artist does his job correctly, you don't need to read the word balloons to understand the story, right? Am I right? Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so I would understand the stories, and then it incentivized me to learn what they were saying, and I think that really helped me learn English. And then I was like curious, what are they saying here in these captioned yellow boxes, and what's going on in this editorial page and the letters page and all that. So it really kind of fueled my drive to learn English. Does anyone have like a Kleenex? Yes? Preferably unused. But I'm okay with whatever. Thank you. All right. So this is a quick way of doing a quick background. But did that answer the question? There was not. It was anything. I mean, I read all comics. I had Tarzan, Archie, Richie Rich. Isn't there like a little witch character?
Wendy.
Huh?
Wendy.
Wendy. Yeah, Wendy the little.
Gumball.
Gold Key comics. They weren't my favorites, but man, I could not get enough of them. So whatever was there, I'd read. And then the other thing was I'd read them over and over again. So I had no comics that were in decent shape whatsoever. My favorite comic or favorite artist? You're making me say things. That was the X-Men. Wait for lightning to strike. No, it was the X-Men. And I think I identified with them because they were shunned by society. They felt different. And yeah, I was an immigrant, right? And I grew up in the Midwest before there were a lot of immigrants in the Midwest. And so I think a lot of my growing up was sort of trying to understand this other culture that was not my own. But I think that also helped in terms of my abilities as an artist because you're constantly sort of scanning what you're seeing and trying to understand what it is that you're seeing, right? Like, you know, what was that gesture that they just used to, what does it mean when the finger goes up in the air between these other fingers? Whatever. So you start understanding like the visual vocabulary of culture and expression, and I think that's a big part of drawing comic books, right? You're doing emotion, you're doing acting, you are conveying information on a non-verbal level, right? And if you think about it. Does it look like I took one? No. Are you asking if I should take it? Have you ever thought about taking formal training? Is that what you're saying? Oh, okay, all right. Sorry, I misheard that. It's my own paranoid fears, self-doubt. I should have. No, I did not. I took some. It's taking so long to dry. I took some art classes during the summer, and sorry, I put too much ink down. I've taken some art classes, but I didn't go to art school. I have a degree in psychology, and but at school, the best class I took was an art class. But it was taught by an abstract expressionist artist. Those are the ones that like paint like an all black canvas or just like a Jackson Pollock kind of splatter kind of thing. And but at the same time, all those artists start from the core, the basics, right? So you start with like doing a color grid, light drawing, learning about composition, all that stuff. And that was probably the best class I took in college. And they were very encouraging at that point. They were like, hey, have you ever thought about a career in the arts? And I didn't feel like I knew enough art history, which I think is a big part of like fine art, sort of understanding that if you paint an all black canvas, like someone else who preceded you, it's not new and it's not revolutionary, it's not, and you need to know what kind of came before you. Because it was as important what you did, it was important what you drew, it was important as when you did it and the intent of the piece as what you actually drew, right? So I didn't feel confident about that. But I did feel like I kind of pulled that, kind of reached back and found that 10-year-old that felt that they were better than everyone else that was being published. And I think you need to, look, that sounds horrible, it sounds like kind of Kanye West or something, but it really, I think you need to feel that, because if you don't feel it, then no one's gonna create a seat for you at the table. They might now because they have to, but back then, there wasn't like, hey, we're waiting for you to join us and become a professional artist. I mean, in a way, you had to fight and claw and get there. And the only way you're gonna get there is if you have an unquestionable desire to get there, and also a belief that you are good enough to be there, right? You have to believe, because everyone else is not gonna believe, right? You have to believe 300%, because after you endure all the battles to get there, they're gonna whittle you down to 88% or 44%, you know? So in a way, you have to kind of build up this incredible momentum of like, I can do it, I'm better than these, or I can do it better, I'm not better, I can do a better job than these people, or I think I can add something that they're not doing, and that's a big part of it.
So is there anybody, you certainly work with a
Oh wait, hold on, I'll go over there. Yes?
Is there, you certainly work with a lot of people in the industry from Chris Middlemont to Southside. Is there anybody that you have like a wish list that you can still work with?
Yeah, but if I did that, it would kind of tip what my next projects were. That's sneaky. I like that. There are a lot. There are a lot of creators. There are a lot of creators. That's all I can say. And I.
A follow-up to All-Star, Batman and Robin?
Right. So the reason why I don't answer the first question is because of the second question. Because I get that question every single panel I do. When are you ever going to finish that damn project? And so I'm just worried if I say, hey, I always wanted to do a project with so-and-so. Every panel will be like, hey, when are you going to ever do that panel or that project with so-and-so, right? So Frank Miller and I have talked about it, and we got close to kind of coming up with a game plan. He still wants to finish it up. I would still like to finish it up. So it's just a matter of timing and schedule. Am I going to do a tie-in? Or you mean DC? I assume DC. I think that, all right, so Doomsday Clock is a very personal story that Jeff Johns is telling, and I think it's set in the future. I think the very first panel of the first issue says 1 year from now or something like that, right? Which you should take very, well, you should just know that's set in the future, right? And I think the characters that he's using, and they're really affected by that particular story. So, I don't know, I think everyone kind of writes Batman a little differently anyway. So if you read like a Scott Snyder Batman versus a Tom King's Batman, or a Kurt Busiek Batman, or Alan Grant Batman, or a Frank Miller Batman, they feel different to me. More so than other characters, I think, because I think he's just allows for that level of creative interpretation. So I think it's consistent with the way Jeff has done Batman in Batman Year One, not Year One, Earth One. I don't know if you have read that series. But he spent months poring over the original Watchmen, did a ton of research. I think it's such a such a unique personal story that in a way we didn't want to tie into it. We didn't want to over commercialize it, make it this thing that everything else had to fold into. That said, I think when he gets to the end of the story, he has an amazing ending, and it does have repercussions in the DC universe. And so I think to the extent that things need to tie into that, they will. But it's not like we're going to do, at the end, a 20-part mega crossover that hey, straight out of the pages of Doomsday Clock, all of this happens, right? Marvel method or script. What he's referring to is that the Marvel method is the writer would write a synopsis, and what was I what did she say to stop? 320? Is that what she said? 340? Okay, all right. Excuse me?
340, yes.
Okay, great. All right, sorry. A little discombobulated today. And full script is full script, right? It says panel 1, character does this, panel 2, he does this and says that. It obviously gives a lot more sort of control to the artist, to the writer, sorry. Whereas Marvel style, they would just write, in this story, so-and-so does this and then fights this character for the next 3 pages and then finds the Infinity Stone, or whatever gauntlet. I'm spoiler alert for Infinity War. Anyway, so so the artist really directed the series, but I think most of the industry now is at full script. It's hard, like having kind of just gone back and done one issue like that, Marvel style. It's tough after you work full script for a while because your muscles kind of atrophy in telling stories in that manner. But I don't think that one style or the other is inherently better. It's just it's kind of what you're used to. I don't know if that's it's. Besides Batman? No. No, I love drawing them all. They're like your children, right? I think you get burnt out drawing the same character over and over, no matter what the character is. And there was certainly a time after I'd done Hush and then All-Star Batman and Robin where I was like, okay, I've had my fill of drawing Batman for a while. So yeah, it's just about, it's like your diet, all right? Variety is the spice of life, something like that. So. Editorial says, hey, you want to do this cover? I go, okay. I don't say no a lot, which is probably not a good... Unless it's Spider-Man. I'm not a big Spider-Man fan. I mean, no, I like Spider-Man. I just don't like drawing Spider-Man. So there's certain things I don't like. So people on Twitch I've talked about this a lot. Because when you stream for hours on end and you don't want to repeat yourself, pretty soon you're talking about, really esoteric stuff. And so I've always had anxiety about drawing animals. Why is this taking so long? I don't know what's going on. No, it's not art. It's a sketch of Batman. Come on, do not psych yourself out. I'm drawing an egg. Stop. It's an egg. I don't know what's going on. Wait, hold on, wait. Wasn't there another question? So Spider-Man. It's just the webbing and stuff. It's awful. Yeah. Sorry, what was your question? Talk a little bit about, that's really open-ended. Are you a therapist in real life, sir? Yeah. So Wildcats. All right. So some of the Wildcats were characters that a friend of mine, when I was growing up, that was into comics, Brandon Choi, and I had created at church. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we would go to church, we'd go to church together, and then afterwards, the Sunday, the session that the kids would go to would end sooner than the parents. It's just sitting around in a classroom. And so we would have characters fight each other, like the X-Men versus the Avengers, and we'd write all their names out and draw lines and talk about who, It got really nerdy. Needless to say, it was just the two of us. And then we started creating our own characters over time. And so some of those characters that were in Wildcats were not the names of the characters, because probably had like really bad names, but some of the designs and powers and costumes were very early on. So some of that we drew from what we had created in high school. And then other stuff was just created, you know, obviously influenced by X-Men. I think there was a cheeky attitude that let's do something that has overtones with these characters that we, you know, had worked on at Marvel. Wink, wink, you know. So there was a little bit of that. I would hasten to say bad boy behavior, but it was like, yeah, it was like, you know, yeah, there was some of that too. But at the end of the day, I think it just really kind of, if you really look at that stuff, and it's something that Warren Ellis has talked about in his reboot of Wildcats in his book, The Wild Storm, he really talks about, like, if you really dissect a lot of that stuff that was coming out in the 90s, there's like fear of government, belief in conspiracies. There was a lot of stuff that was going on in the sort of the zeitgeist at the time that was really reflected in those titles that, to me, were very different from the themes that were addressed in X-Men or even the Marvel and DC universes. And a lot of those ideas and themes eventually did become incorporated. I mean, just, you know, from superpowered groups that worked in very cynical kind of ways. You know, I think Rob's Youngblood kind of spoke to superheroes as celebrities, but then this notion of superheroes as unbenevolent policemen. I don't know how to express it. It's a very Watchmen kind of concept in that you have these characters that are around, but they're not working in humanity's best interest. They're working on a secret agenda. So books like The Authority and Stormwatch. So.
What was it like leaving Marvel to start Image?
It was awesome. What was it like? I was freelance, so I was working out of a studio at home, so it really didn't feel that different, you know. It's not like I stopped going into the Marvel offices because I never went in, except maybe once or twice a year. So it wasn't like a traditional job that one would have, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm leaving, right? It wasn't like that. It was more like you wake up and you're drawing for yourself versus someone that is an editor thousands of miles away. It was probably like, it was a great time. It was a lot of fun, a lot of stupid fun. You know what? I let the fans kind of. That's a horrible answer, but I don't look at the. So when you guys bring up comics for me to sign and stuff, I sometimes I'll flip through them. I don't really think about the stories. I think about the struggle it was to produce that issue, or how late I was, or things like that. Or there was a page in there that worked out really well, or there's a panel that I really screwed up.
What work are you proud of the most?
Can't find an eraser. Excuse me? What?
What work are you proud of the most?
What was it like when you actually counted 1,000 and
What was it like working with Bendis on Action 1000? It was awesome. Yeah, I don't know. It was great, you know. Yeah, thank you. It was weird because, you know, he's kind of known for doing a lot of conversations between characters, and that's kind of what I anticipated coming down the pike. And instead, he wrote 12 pages of like nonstop action of this new villain coming in and just, you know, beating Superman around Metropolis. So it was really unexpected. It was a lot of fun. And to answer that other person's question about people I'd like to work with, obviously Brian's on that list. I mean, he's one of the foremost. He's a legendary writer that really crafted the modern history of Marvel Comics. I mean, he's one of the key architects of that. And so we're excited to see what he does at DC, and it'll be fun to kind of do something with him. But I'll tell you that it's hard to do monthly comics, and I just find it, as I've gotten older, it's just, it becomes more and more difficult. Not so much the drawing, but finding the time to do it. And I think that's the biggest obstacle now. My parents, I've defeated them, but it's father time. I guess that's the name. Excuse me? Yes, it's a young man's job. Thanks for saying I'm old. Thank you. Appreciate it. That's one way of saying it.
What do you think is making you successful?
I think I've done well. I think I look like I could be a doctor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, but I don't. How do I say this without sounding? No. It's not that I can't say it. I don't want to apologize after I say it. So let me think about when I say it. A what? Doctor come? No. You know what it is? This sounds stupid, but I like doing what other people don't want me to do. And and you can say that's either stupidity or courage or ambition, but my parents really put a lot of pressure on me to be a doctor. I had to literally walk out of the house and threaten to kind of, I don't know where I was going because I had no money, and we lived in the suburbs. So as soon as I got out of the house, I have no car. I'm like, where am I going to walk to? I live in the Midwest. It took me 8 hours to find another town, and but they didn't call my bluff. They chased after me. And so that's how I was able to convince them. And then when I was at Marvel, I had a pretty cushy job at Marvel. I was working on their best-selling book, or one of their best-selling books. I was making a very good living, and I was drawing the characters I loved as a kid, but there was a part of me that just wanted to, some men wanted to just see the cities burn or something. Is that the expression? Not that I was like evil, but I just like the idea of doing something, just sort of not letting go of security and doing something that not necessarily dangerous, but something that I couldn't necessarily predict, right, in terms of what would happen. And I think if you want some level of success, there's something called this concept of risk versus reward, right? So the more risk you take, the more your reward could be, but the more likely you could fail, right? And so I think that's the heart of anyone's success story, is that you're going to probably fail many more times before you become successful at something, but you can't succeed unless you try and risk the chance of failure. Sorry, that's my long-winded answer.
What was the best idea you ever had that you never got to see come to fruition?
Excuse me?
What was the best idea you ever had that got shot down?
The best idea that I ever got, I don't know if it's the best idea I had. There was a lot of ideas that were presented to me that I screwed up. Like early on, before South Park was on the air, I had the chance of licensing that property as like trading cards and comics. And I said, and I had the episodes on tape. They gave me a VHS tape and said, do you want to put a bid on this? And I didn't even watch the tape. And then, yeah, there you go. So when we say I'm successful, I'm an idiot. What are you talking about? Could be bothered to watch it. Yeah. I still cry about that one. Then there was a thing called Pokemon. I passed on that. No, it wasn't Pokemon. Yeah, Bitcoin, yeah. Managing what? That's right. Yeah, so what he's talking about is back in the Image days, I had the property called Wildcats, and it was made into a cartoon that was on CBS. And then we had a toy line that was Playmates Toys, and yeah, it was an interesting experiment. I mean, not experiment, it was an interesting project in that you really realize how much work goes into any of these kind of huge franchises that make it to Saturday morning. There's just so much stuff that, just even the logistics of approving everything, from the storyboards to the designs to, at that point they were merchandising a lot of stuff, so they're like toothbrushes and ties and, baking goods and stuff. And I stupidly thought, like, I own this, so I should approve everything. And I wanted to approve everything because it was the first time I'd done something like this. But it was crazy in terms of the amount of work that, sheer logistics of managing something like that. And it wasn't even that successful as a cartoon and ultimately merchandise. So hats off to anything that finds success. It takes an army of people to really make these things as ubiquitous or as successful as they are. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I got to do a little voice acting. I was like a guard in one of the episodes. I get run over by a truck. And then that time that we were filming in Toronto, and we were doing the voice recording in Toronto, and that's where the animation company was. And at the same time, they were recording the X-Men in the next recording day. And so I saw them, and so they invited me to come in, and I did a voice. I did a voice of a Sentinel in one of the X-Men cartoons. Yeah. So if you hear like mutant stop, that's my best Sentinel voice. They modified it, whatever, but mutant stop, whatever. That was me. So I have 2 speaking roles in cartoons. Anyway.
Which writer pushed you the most?
What? This is like when chat goes by too quickly. You can't like, what?
Out of all the writers you work with, who
Yeah.
pushed you the most outside your comfort zone?
Good question. I would say probably Brian Azzarello, he has a certain way of sort of his pacing and the stories he likes to tell, but that's the kind of story I wanted to work on because it was so different than what I normally do. Everyone else I thought was really good at, like Jeff Loeb saying, hey, I know what you're good at and I know what fans want to see, so we're going to create this storyline called Hush, and he nailed that, and I think, and then other writers just kind of played to their strengths. So like, to me, Jeff Johns on Justice League was all about his knowledge of these DC characters. He just wrote it, the way I think he would for anyone, but then they would leave me room for like big set pieces because they know that's kind of something I can do. Yeah.
Is there anything missing from comics these days that you wish would come back?
Is there anything? Letters pages I hear about constantly. What character am I going to draw? Okay. I'll do one more? All right, okay. I'll do one more here. It's just so we can give away 3 here.
What's your favorite panel you've ever done?
My favorite panel that I've ever done. It's probably one that I can't even remember in that, in that it's usually like a small figure. It's usually something to do with shadows that I've kind of put together on in a way that interests me, that really has nothing to do with the story. If you go online, if you're an artist, enter this kind of thing, like Wally Wood's 20 Ways to Compose Panels, I think that's what it's called. And if you Google that, there's like 20 little thumbnails of different panels that he did with different lighting schemes. And anytime I can kind of pull off one of those, it makes me very happy because to me, when I was kind of breaking in, that was kind of the gold standard, like, oh, this is cool. These are the kinds of things I should aspire to be able to kind of craft and compose. And it was tricky. It was hard finding, the ability and, it's like learning a move in a video game. Like, you gotta push X, Y, Z, and then A, and then left control or whatever. But then actually do it in the heat of the moment while you're playing, very hard, right? So there was a lot of that kind of going on.
When you worked with Netherrealm Studios, did you go to them, or did they come to you? Was that something you kind of wanted to do? And how was that experience?
They came to me and said, hey, do you want to do a design of Scorpion for DC versus Mortal Kombat? And then out of that came the other characters. But I mean, I think, Ed Boon is a comics fan, and he and I had met about, I don't know, we were just doing some cross promotions because we're trying to support the games that they were producing. So, anyway, so how do I give these away here? Huh? Okay, I was just looking for anyone that wanted one, but yeah. Okay, so what? Yeah, so what I usually do is I ask for weird things that people might have on their possession. So, what's worked in the past before, like nail clippers. Does anyone have nail clippers? But hold them up in there.
I had my keys.
Nail clippers? You guys are very manicured group. I usually like one or none. Right. The guy in the orange? Okay. Constance is calling. It's not my fault. This Constance is okay, and then the next one, well, you can't call it out, then it'll look like we're working together. Bob, don't do that. I don't know what he knows. So, all right, so who has, so you're online, sir, okay, and then who has a receipt from Taco Bell? If you watch the Twitch stream, sometimes I'm drawing at like 1 in the morning and I order Taco Bell. All right, that's what I like to see. Let's see what you ate here. Is that Taco Bell? Is it?
Del Taco.
Is it? Yeah. Nice try. Taco Bell? Oh, sorry, man. Please don't take this the wrong way, but you look like a Taco Bell customer. I am a Taco. Yeah. We're excited for Taco Bell. Yeah, I'm a combo number 1, which is the Supreme Burrito and the taco. What? Let me see. Wait. What do you got here? That's it? All right. Okay. Fantastic. All right. I'm gonna give you this Batman sword. Is there one of these two that you would? The Joker? All right, there you go, sir. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sure. All right, okay. All right. All right, and then the last one, does anyone have a copy of, all right, this will be the first hand I see. So, Immortal Man number 3. Oh, wait, is that Immortal Man number 2? Right there? There you go. That's a comic book. Alright, he's calling it? Okay. Number 2? Okay, there you go. Alright, so thank you guys very much for hanging in here. And I'll catch you guys later. Thank you.